Welcome back, everybody. How you doing today? I'm going to be going over Imane Khelif and her situation. I just got done making a video about sex and the categorization itself and how it's in our scientific understanding. I feel like a lot of people do not know how to properly categorize it so as to remain consistent. And there's really the two ways, I would say. Like, you're either going directly off chromosomes. I guess there's three ways: directly off chromosomes, the gametes, or a viable gametes, or a combination of the two. And I think that it's possible to just go straight up with the Y chromosome. I think that is the best marker for whether or not you can have viable gametes. And in this case, whether or not you can reproduce, not whether or not you can have these sexual characteristics that we're going to be going over. Okay, so the three main scenarios that I think are most plausible when it comes to Imane Khelif's situation. We don't know the full, all the information about this, but what we can do is speculate based on some of the things that we're hearing, just based on some of the evidence that we have. So we know that she has higher testosterone levels, and she's been disqualified at some point in the history of this sport. And I think it was 2023, last year, she was disqualified from a match. And I'm not going to go into the details or the convoluted messiness of that, because it's kind of irrelevant. We just need to know that she has this higher testosterone and ask, what is this about? So is it something that she was taking to boost her testosterone? If it's not the case, and it is the case that she has this disorder, we'll go into details of that. So in the case that she does not have a Y chromosome, then everything is as everyone's saying. Then everything's a sham. Everything that everyone claims otherwise is just spewing hatred and propaganda. She has a Y chromosome, but a consideration is whether or not somebody who has an XX chromosome with a genetic anomaly of having a higher testosterone level, just because of the genetics, whether or not they should be able to compete with females or other females, because they are a female. That is something. I mean, it's, for me personally, I think she should be able to compete. You're competing in your category of female. All there is a natural testosterone that you're getting from your DNA. I do not think there's an unfair advantage there. You're operating completely on what your God-given gifts are, and I think that's completely fair. So a lot of people might push back on that, but I think it's fair if that is the case. So if it is the case that just some natural phenomenon that happened within those, complete X chromosomes across the board, and you're still getting this higher testosterone, I think it's fair game. Although the things that everyone's saying are still a sham. Like, she's not boosting her testosterone, she's not transgender, she's not any of these other things that people are claiming, if that's the case. The second scenario that I see that's plausible is she is a female who is taking testosterone or taking some other hormone boosters that are raising her testosterone levels. If this is the case, then she should be barred from returning to the sport or the Olympics. And if it's not the case, then it's one of these other two. And then the third is that she does have a Y chromosome, and things are going to get complicated from here. So I'm going to go in depth. There's an even deeper level of analysis in my video that I'll link in the description. But this portion, it gets complicated, because a lot of people want to define sex based on your genitalia, and that's not how we do it scientifically, because your genitalia can manifest just based on the hormones that are present in your body at a particular time in development. So whether or not you have these, you have the ability to have these characteristics is what's going to determine whether or not you have what sex you are. So the presence of a Y chromosome makes it impossible to have viable eggs. So to take that into consideration, if you have a Y chromosome anywhere in your DNA, viable eggs are an impossibility. So if this individual, Imane Khelif, has a Y chromosome, they cannot possibly be female. So they have to be male. So they are a male if they have a Y chromosome. And if you have no Y chromosome, it's impossible to have viable sperm. So again, this is one of those things where it's interchangeable. So having a Y chromosome is the same as having viable sperm. So they're one and the same. Like, I mean, it doesn't mean that you will have these, right? Like, there's other genetic anomalies that might happen, or damage to the pelvis, or anything like that can prevent you from having these. But if everything goes as planned with your DNA, then the Y chromosome will result in viable sperm. And you can only have viable sperm if you have a Y chromosome, even though you can manifest sperm if with an XX individual through the transmutation of the SRY gene into the XX chromosome. Males with a Y chromosome can get pregnant if they develop a uterus. They can only do this by having a healthy uterus and having a fertilized egg implanted in their uterus. They gain a uterus due to a dysfunctional endocrine system or physical anomalies as a result of their genetics. Because humans start with female characteristics and only develop male characteristics after being exposed to certain hormones at certain time periods during development, this means that males with the presence of a dysfunctional Y chromosome will sometimes continue female primary and secondary sex characteristics. But this does not make them female, as it is impossible for them to create viable eggs. So they'll have all the organs. So this does not make them female, as it is impossible for them to create viable eggs. The in vitro fertilization is the only way to get them pregnant, and it cannot happen naturally. So they cannot get pregnant through natural means. You can only do this through a scientist extracting out an egg from a donor, going to another donor, extracting a sperm, and then fertilizing that egg in a science lab, and then injecting that egg into this uterus of this male. So it's weird, but to think about that, a male can get pregnant, but we can only do that through scientifically forcing this to happen. So to summarize, this means male can get pregnant, but only because they were born with female characteristics. We are all born with female characteristics, and the hormones we're exposed to over our lives have massive influence on the primary and secondary sex characteristics that manifest afterwards. So like nipples is one thing. Almost all males have nipples as a result of us developing as females first, and then at some point in development, our body turns on our SRY genes and all these other genes that affect the male nature that descends our testes and starts creating a penis, etc., etc. The main takeaway, though, is that males have a Y chromosome and females do not. That's the bottom line. So as I just elaborated on, you can get female primary sex characteristics, which is like vagina and breasts and even ovaries and uterus. Those are all possible with an XY chromosome. If the SRY gene from the Y chromosome is transmuted onto an X chromosome and that individual is manifested, then they have the SRY genes. But that they're only going to create those male characteristics. They're not going to be functional in the way that you can get someone pregnant. They will be infertile. This is because they do not have all the other things required for spermatogenesis, or the creation of viable sperm. No one can develop gametes that are not aligned with their sex. So anybody with X chromosomes all the way across cannot develop sperm. I don't care how many penises you have, how many testes you have, you cannot develop viable sperm and have offspring. And in the other case, if you have an XY chromosomes, you cannot possibly create but viable eggs for the sake of procreation. So in these two cases, these individuals are completely infertile. If they develop testes, if the male develops testes or ovaries but no testes, and in the other case, if the female develops testes but no ovaries, that's what happens. You cannot use those things. They will not be useful in terms of procreation. So, and people argue that's not all that matters. Well, if you're not oriented towards that, all's you're oriented towards is pleasure, hedonistic pleasure and sex. Like, if you're not oriented towards procreation, that's all that's left. It's like your life, if your life isn't about procreating to have a child, then your life is going to be more tilted towards hedonism and short-term gratification and other things like that, because it removes one of our main purposes, and the thing that has driven us for billions of years is to procreate, create syntheses, to manifest other things and beings into the world. And obviously not everyone has that luxury, not everyone has that ability, and I mean, you shouldn't downplay that necessarily, the people who can't do so, but we shouldn't treat them as if they're gods either, or they're people that need some sympathy, like in terms of like that we should demand sympathy for them. Like, obviously people can give sympathy freely, or if they choose to these individuals, but we shouldn't go around demanding sympathy and demanding people to categorize them a certain way, because it really comes down to this: whether or not you have a Y chromosome. Like, if you have one, then you're a male, and if you don't have one, then you're female. And that's what it comes down to when it comes to Imane Khelif. And I may not have articulated everything perfectly, but I think this is as true as you can get in this perspective. So I'm going to link this in the description, and I hope we can all come to truth about this situation, because I want to treat this individual as humanely as possible. I think they wanted to manifest themselves in the truest way, and they're seeking to do so, as long as she's not cheating. But I have respect for this individual. They're working hard. They're trying to better their lives, and that's really the main thing here. But when it comes to our understanding of the truth of the matter, we should also understand how to properly categorize these individuals so as to prevent these kind of issues in the future, and all this trauma and bickering back and forth. Because if all you do is separate it based on this standard, then yes, it makes it harder, because then you have to test every single individual's chromosomes, but it's going to get so cheap in the future. I think this is the way to go in the future, and this is where we're heading. But obviously, in 99.9% of cases, or the majority of cases, like the vast majority of cases, you're just going to be able to assume based on, the genitalia at birth, which sex this individual is. And it's often not until people are impotent that they get tested for these things. And sometimes people find out, like, oh, I'm actually was born a female, and I just manifested the male primary and secondary sex characteristics, and I'm actually a female, and there's nothing wrong with that. And we shouldn't, downplay these people's situations, but yeah, that's the truth of the matter. So there is a binary in sex, and it's all revolving around the Y chromosome, and everything else is just a manifestation of hormones. So whether or not your endocrine system is functioning or aligning with your chromosomes, and if it's not aligning with your chromosomes, you're going to have the opposite sex characteristics. It will have the opposite, because it's not functioning properly. But yeah, so in the female case, when it's not functioning properly, it's either there's some genetic thing messing with the endocrine system, or the SRY gene makes its way over to an X chromosome, which causes them to manifest male characteristics, or the Y chromosome, there's something dysfunctional within it in a male that causes them to, or some other endocrine function that causes them to manifest the sex characteristics of the opposite sex. And that's pretty much the majority of all intersex problems, is a dysfunction of the Y chromosome, transmutation of the SRY gene onto the X chromosome, or some dysfunction with the endocrine system as a result of one of these two genes, or some other, or these two chromosomes, or some other genes specific genes that determine hormone functionality. So this was a very short video, and I hope it helps people understand what's going on. And this is how you apply the video I go over at length when it comes to sex. Like, it's very cut and dry. But I appreciate everyone for listening, and I hope we can all just get past this, because it really is not that big a deal. But it is a big deal at the same time. Like, it's not a big deal for this individual, because I view them as likely not actually fully understanding their situation either. I don't think this person fully understands the science that's behind this, and that's okay. They might even, but in that case, I would say they're being disingenuous, because if they understood that they were a male, and they're still continuing to operate, then I think that they're operating on the understanding that they're at an unfair advantage. But as more information comes out, we're going to figure out which one of these three most likely scenarios it is. And there may be another scenario that I'm not thinking of that may be the case. But as far as I can tell, it's one of these three. And this includes all the arguments from everybody that I've seen on both sides, and even a third argument to say, like, yeah, she's just taking test boosters, which I don't think is the case based on all the evidence so far. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Love you all. Bye.